Wike built a system believing loyalty will outlive ambition. He shaped strategy, mastered dominance, and ruled by his presence. But politics is never static. Those who sit closest to power learn not just obedience, but timing, not just survival, but conquest. Now the tables tilt. The teacher watches as his own playbook is opened, revised, and executed with less noise and more patience. This is not rebellion, it is evolution, a quiet transfer of mastery. In this moment, Wike is not merely facing opposition, he is confronting his own legacy. Because the hardest lesson in politics is this: when you train a man well, you also train the one who may one day outgrow you. And history is unforgiving to those who forget that power never belongs, it only passes through. Wike spent 17 long days in Rivers State, moving from one local government to another, tour after tour, rally after rally, turning the state into a political stage. It was a show of force, a declaration of relevance, and a reminder that he once ruled this terrain without any question. From local government to local government, his voice thundered with confidence, but it was sharpened by bitterness. The speeches were no longer just about project or legacy, they were laced with jabs, thinly veiled insults aimed at Fubara. He mocked competence, questioned authority, and dismissed leadership, speaking as though the seat of power still answered to him. Each insult was meant to sting, to provoke, to remind the people of who used to be in charge. Wike spoke with sarcasm, ridiculing decisions, reducing the office of his former protege to something small, something unearned. In his tone was the anger of a man watching control slip away, and in his words, the desperation of someone trying to dominate the narrative with volume rather than position. But politics has moved on. On 8th January 2026, the political tension in Rivers State reached a boiling point. Wike's loyalist lawmakers, operating from the shadows of the state assembly, made a bold and calculated move. They attempted to initiate impeachment proceedings against Governor Similayi Fubara and his deputy. It was not subtle, it was not cautious, it was direct strike, meant to destabilize, intimidate, and reclaim lost ground. In a hurried sitting, the loyalist bloc pushed forward a list of allegations, read out with urgency and accusation-heavy language. The claims were sweeping and explosive: accusations of gross misconduct, alleged breaches of constitutional procedures, questions around financial decisions, administrative authority, and claims of sidelining the legislature. Each allegation was framed not just as a governance issue, but as a justification for removal. But the speed of the move exposed its weakness. There was no broad consensus, no moral authority, no political cover. What was meant to look like lawful accountability instead felt like a coordinated ambush, driven more by loyalty to a former power broker than by allegiance to democratic process. The assembly itself became a battlefield, divided, tensed, uncertain. Outside the chamber, the public watched closely, sensing that this was not about governance alone, but about unfinished battles between mentor and student. The impeachment attempts did not just target Fubara and his deputy, it tested the soul of Rivers politics. It asked a dangerous question: can yesterday's power still overthrow today's mandate? And in that moment, the lesson was unmistakable. Impeachment is a constitutional tool, but when wielded as a political weapon, it exposes not strength but fear. Fear of irrelevance, fear of loss, fear that the man once trained has fully stepped out of the shadow and is no longer afraid to govern without permission. History recorded the date, and Rivers State understood the message. Please, before we proceed, I want to make a passionate appeal about this YouTube analytics. 96% of people who watch Impact Media are not subscribed to it. Only 3% of people are subscribed to this channel. When you subscribe to this channel and like the video, it helps YouTube to send this channel to many other audience. Let's continue. Fubara was out of town, far from the noise, far from the assembly drama, on an official trip to Paris where he had gone to meet with the president. While his loyalists and critics back home traded accusations and threats, Fubara was operating on a different plane altogether, engaging power at the center, not scrambling at the fringes. The timing was telling, and Wike's loyalist lawmakers gathered on 8, hurriedly attempting to trigger impeachment proceedings against both the governor and his deputy. The man they sought to remove was sitting across tables of influence, discussing matters of state, legitimacy, and continuity. The contrast could not have been sharper. Conspiracy versus diplomacy, urgency versus authority. Back in Rivers, allegations were being read out with drama and aggression, while in Paris, Fubara was projecting calm, stability, and confidence. One side was fighting yesterday's battle, while the other was securing tomorrow's alliances. And that absence spoke louder than any speech. It exposed the impeachment move for what it truly was, not an act of accountability, but a desperate gamble launched when the governor was physically away but politically secure. History has a way of underlining irony. While his opponents tried to unseat him in haste, Fubara was meeting power face to face, reinforcing the very mandate they sought to undermine. In politics, location matters, and on that day, the governor was exactly where power flows, while his challengers were left arguing in an echo chamber back home. The impeachment plot began to unravel not with noise but with withdrawal. As tension thickened inside the Rivers State House of Assembly, a few lawmakers chose a different path, one guided by conscience, caution, and political survival. Peter Agbe, representing Degema constituency, and Emilia Amadi of Obiakpo constituency, stepped back from the impeachment move. Their withdrawal was not accidental, it was calculated. They read the room, they sensed the mood of their constituents, they understood the weight of history pressing in on that moment. What was being packaged as gross misconduct was beginning to look less like constitutional duty and more like a political vendetta, and they refused to be foot soldiers in a battle whose outcome was uncertain and whose cause could be permanent. Peter Agbe, seasoned and rooted in the realities of Dengema politics, understood that the impeachment without public backing is political suicide. Emilia Amadi, aware of the pulse of Obiakpo, one of the most politically conscious constituency, and the same constituency with Nyesom Wike, knew that aligning with a rushed power play could erase years of goodwill overnight. So they pulled out. Mrs. Emilia stated in her statement that she had earlier informed Wike of her decision, but he has asked her to do whatever her conscience tells her and align with the Constitution and all agreements entered with the supervision of Mr. President for the good and betterment of Rivers State and Nigeria. It was a clear message to Wike, deliberate and impossible to ignore. When lawmakers like Peter Agbe and Emilia Amadi withdrew their support, they were not just stepping away from a process, they were drawing a line. In Rivers politics, silence can be loyalty, but withdrawal is communication, and this one spoke loudly. The message was simple: this fight no longer has full backing. By pulling out, they signaled that the impeachment move had crossed from strategy into excesses. that loyalty to Wike had limits, and that personal battles can always be dressed up as constitutional duty. These were lawmakers who understood that their first allegiance is to their constituencies, not to a former governor's grudges. It was also a warning, subtle but sharp, a warning that the House was no longer united, a warning that fear was losing its grip, a warning that Rivers politics was entering a new phase where instructions are questioned, not obeyed blindly. For Wike, the implication was heavy. The same structure he was controlled absolutely was now sending signals of resistance. Wike's battle was no longer confined to Rivers State alone. It spilled beyond party lines and into the national arena. In a fiery outburst, he turned his guns on the APC National Secretary, Senator Ajibola Bashiru, issuing a stern warning that echoed with menace and history. He told him bluntly to stay away from Rivers politics, not as advice, but as a threat. He reminded Bashiru that Rivers State is not a playground for outsiders, not a territory where national figures meddle and walk away untouched. Then came the chilling line, the kind meant to silence opposition and intimidate ambition. Wike stated that those who dared to interfere in Rivers politics in the past are nowhere to be found in quotes. Bashiru's response to Wike was calm, deliberate and pointed, stripped of drama but heavy with meaning. Rather than trading insults or responding with threats, Bashiru chose restraint. He rejected intimidation outrightly and made it clear that no individual owns Rivers State or any part of Nigeria. Politics, he implied, is governed by law and democratic freedom, not by fear or personal dominance. Bashiru reminded Wike subtly but firmly that Nigeria operates under a constitution, not under political warlords. And participation in political discourse, he suggested, is not something that requires permission from a former governor or any power broker. Bashiru questioned the contradiction in Wike's posture, serving as a federal minister sworn to national duty while simultaneously acting as the dominant political enforcer in Rivers State. According to him, if Wike wanted to play kingmaker, issue threats and control state politics, then integrity demanded he do so without the cover and privilege of a federal office. You cannot be a minister of the Federal Republic expected to build bridges and uphold unity while fanning political fires in your home state. You cannot warn people to stay away from Rivers State while occupying a position meant to serve all Nigerians. By telling Wike to resign and face Rivers politics head-on, Bashiru reframed the conflict. No longer was it about interference, it became about accountability and consistency. National office, he implied, is not a shield for local dominance. Wike's departure to Abuja was formally announced by his spokesman Larry Olayinka. No rallies, no insults, no threats, just a statement, brief, official, and carefully timed. The announcement signaled a shift from the noisy streets of Rivers politics back to the corridors of federal power. The timing mattered. After days of public confrontations, impeachment drama, and verbal clashes with national figures. This is Impact Media. Don't forget to comment your thoughts, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. I'll see you again in the next video. Thank you for listening.